Okay, today's video is going to be awesome. At least I think it's awesome. We've been planning this one for a while. We get a lot of questions from people who say, what's the best dry fly rod, or what's a good small stream rod? So we're going to focus today on 4-weight rods, and we're going to focus on a good price range. So if you can't afford a $1,000 rod or don't want to afford a $1,000 rod, we've got some good options. But we're going to go through each of these and show what some of the advantages and pros and cons are, but also talk about why you would want a 4-weight rod. If you have a 5-weight, do you need a 4-weight? If you have a 3-weight, do you need a 4-weight? That kind of thing. So pay attention today. This is going to be all on the water. I'm not going to get super nerdy with this because even though I am super nerdy, I think we want to keep this down to kind of layman's terms understanding. And then as we get out on the water, every rod we'll discuss and kind of break it down, what we liked about the rod, what we might have not liked about the rod. And so at the end of this, you'll see kind of what our recommendations are towards the end of the video in terms of price, budget, value, and performance, and those types of things. Anyway, this is going to be awesome. Stay tuned.
That's a big round, bro.
Okay, we are on a small stream today, and there's no better way to give you, our viewers, feedback on what our favorite dry fly setup would be. And specifically, we're going to talk about 4-weights. Now, some caveats to all this, because I know we're going to probably get some people that are maybe not upset, but some maybe, that we didn't include their rod in this. Now, we got 5 rods. It's about all we can do on a day like this, where we're trying to put in some time with each rod. I've fished with all these rods, but today we're going to go kind of one by one. The idea is by the end of the video, you should have an idea of what setup might be best for you, given the type of fishing that you do and the budget that you're on. We certainly don't want to only push $1,000 rods, but at the same time, we're not going to only push budget rods. I do want to give you a good lay of the land in terms of what's out there right now. And these are the brands that we sell, that we trust. We try to carry most of the brands that most people would. So you're going to see a lot of Orvis and Sage and Reja or Echo, even though they're not in this one particularly. And obviously Winston, you got the Redington EDC. We're going to go through each of those. And these ones are picked on a few criteria. Number one, we're looking at dry fly, so we're talking function. And number two, brands that we trust, brands that have decent warranties, brands that stand behind their products. Some of these might come from overseas. Some are made in the US. You can Google those if you want to know specifically, but we're going to just break it down by talking about the rod in hand, the reel that we've paired it with. And again, we're trying to keep within that same budget range. So we're not going to throw a $700 reel on a $200 rod or vice versa, but that will at least give you an idea. You can obviously mix and match as many of these as you like. We're sticking to 4-weights because that way we can compare apples to apples, especially when it has to do with lines. Now, lines are probably the dark horse in this whole equation. I'll be upfront and say we're not going to test every single line with every single rod reel combo here. So I will say between the major line manufacturers, you are going to see differing tapers for the same weights. We're going to err on the side of dry fly friendly lines. So these are not going to be your MPXs or the, formerly Rio Grands, or the heavier half line or full line heavy setups. These are going to be mostly true line, specifically for dry flies, delicate presentations, and then the rods to fit that. Obviously, you can swap these out and mix and match, and we'll go through those. By the end of the video, again, The idea is to give you kind of soup to nuts idea of what could be for you the best dry fly rod setup for the price that you're most comfortable with. All right, for the video today, I'm going to start at lower price range and kind of work my way up. And I'm going to start with probably one of our best selling, we'll call it a budget rod, low end on the price, and that's the Orvis Clearwater. I've paired the Clearwater, and this one is a 4-weight, like all of these are going to be 4-weights. This is an 8.5 footer. One of the considerations, in addition to just the 4-weight, again, lighter kind of rod setup for dry flies and small streams, is the length. Now, granted, we're only pulling 6 inches off our standard 9-foot rod, but that's going to do a few things for us. Number one, in a small stream, it will give you a little lower profile as you cast. It's also going to lessen the total weight if you were to compare this to, say, a full 9-foot 4-weight. And so the length kind of plays those two factors in there. It's going to have a different action. But the Clearwater, for instance, here, and I paired it with the Clearwater reel. Now, this is a cast reel, cast aluminum, made overseas. And just in a nutshell, the difference between a cast aluminum and a machined aluminum is that the cast is not typically as strong. So they aren't going to stand up to the drops and the bumps and the scrapes as much as, say, a machined, fully machined fly reel. Anyway, so we will be doing a mix of both, but the first two that we're going to talk about are going to be the cast ones. So let's talk about what I'm going to do in the test here. So first off, I'm going to use the old Spencer Higa method for unseating my fly. Now the fly's tied on at the fourth guide down. Now the beauty of this is I don't have to touch my fly. Hope I'm doing this right, Spence. And what we do is we strip off a little bit of line that gives us some slack. And now I pull the leader and tip it out from under there. And then I simply go oink. And my fly is now free. I haven't had to reach up and contort myself to get that working. So when we're talking small streams, dry fly fishing, a couple things are going to come into play. Number one, probably tight quarters. So my back cast may not be super clear. So it's important for these rods to do their business at short range. And again, because I'm dealing with a small creek, the exception here with this stretch, I can lay down a 40-foot cast if I really needed to, and we'll get into that. But I think most importantly for most anglers is not bombing 100-foot casts or whatever it seems to be the cool thing on social media these days, but rather throwing down the appropriate amount of leader and line to get you to the fish that are within reach. And again, small streams, a lot of that is tight, close-in casting. Probably one of the biggest overlooked pieces of a dry fly rig is that ability to cast close, to be able to load that rod so the tip's going to have to be responsive enough to load and unload and settle down pretty quickly, but to do it accurately in close. So again, I'm not talking about deflection. We're not going to get super nerdy about anything other than, does this function given what I need it to do? So what we've got today, we've got some little blue-winged olives coming off a little bit early in the hatch. So we'll typically headhunt these things out. Now, let's assume I found a fish rising. We got brown trout in here mostly, and it's close. Now, the nice thing about a stream like this, we've got rocks that cannot obfuscate my noise. I still want to be at least a little bit cautious, not to bust in here and make a bunch of noise. But I'm going to get as close as I reasonably can, and I'm going to cast. So we're just going to do, and most of these rods are going to be set up with a 12 to 16 foot leader. Just depends on the leader setup, but I'll call it a long leader. And then the lines, in this case, I've got a Scientific Angler's Mastery. That's a $70-ish line, so it's not top of the line. And this is the Infinity taper, which is kind of an all-around taper. The reason I went with Infinity versus, say, a trout taper, which would be more of a fine kind of dry fly taper, is because with this rod, I was a little worried that maybe it doesn't have the guts to really punch the lighter weight line, because you lose a little mass there up front. But anyway, so first we're going to talk with respect to the the low, easier to reach casts. And again, these are nothing fancy on the cast here, but I will say most rods are probably going to do okay at just, you know, let's say leader's length. What we really start to see a difference, now I've got a little bit of line up and it's loading decently. I'm able to get my fly out there leader like I want it. And so within leader length, I'm probably not great. Now I just saw a trout rise at about 12 feet out. Did a great job with that cast. And again, loaded, unloaded, great. No worries there. I will say this actually feels very light in hand for a sub $300 fly rod. And now as I start to get a little further out there, we'll go with a little bit longer cast. And that's money. And we're about 20, 25 feet right there. And I see a trout at about 40 feet. Now, you may not want to bomb a mega cast that far, but I just got 30 feet and that felt like money. I will say I'm kind of surprised with this Clearwater. I shouldn't say I'm surprised. Clearwater, I think, is one of the best value rods for that price. Whatever old Sean Combs is doing there at Orvis on the design here is working clearly. But this feels great out at that distance. No issues casting. It loads great, it unloads great, settles down, does its business, feels good in hand. Yeah, little bit of wind there. I'd probably punch that a little bit more. But yeah, at the end of the day, that thing is money. So for the price, again, this is the first one we're comparing and I'm trying to do them all sequentially so that I get a good feel for that. I'm going to say you can't go wrong with this one, but let's see how it stacks up with the next one. Okay, next on the docket, we've got the Redington EDC, that's everyday carry. This is a 9-foot 4-weight. So it will feel a little heavier, and I can just tell that by holding the rod in my hand. And again, I wouldn't necessarily chalk that up to the quality or the design of the rod. I'd say to a large extent there's extra 6 inches of graphite on here. I will say it does feel probably, if I were to chop that off, this one's probably gonna be have a heavier feel in hand. But let's do our in close cast. And I can tell off the bat, this already has a really good amount of power, which is probably going to bode well for some distance. It still turns the fly over close range. I don't, however, feel a ton of loading at that close range, which is, again, that's not a big deal. That's more of kind of an enjoyment factor. And just by way of information, so this isn't, like I said, 9-foot 4-weight. The reel is a Redington Run reel. It is also cast aluminum. I can feel, again, the weight. These are going to weigh more than the machine ones typically. And I can feel that a little bit, but it still balances pretty good. And now as I'm getting out to about 15 feet, definitely hitting its paces there, but still within that 15 and closer range, which I've got fish rising, you know, in that range. It's feels a little heavy turning over, but again, this is everyday carry, so I'm probably not using this for my only dry fly rod, but it's still gonna do well. Now, this line is a Scientific Angler's Technical Trout, or sorry, Rio Technical Trout, which is a fine taper. I think that does great for this rod. It could, if I needed to kind of be out and throw maybe some nymphs and streamers, I may go up, or in fact, the Rio Gold would probably be perfect for this in kind of the mid taper. Yeah, now I'm out there 25 feet, and this is laying out perfectly. I've got fish out at that distance still, and we've got that fish that's 40 feet, and I'm thinking that this rod is gonna have no issue launching a cast that far. And honestly, 40 feet's not that far. But for a small stream with dry flies, it is a distance. Oh yeah. Okay, so here's what we got going on here. That thing is money at that distance. Like, that's the sweet spot. And I'm a fair to midland caster. Got pretty good accuracy, honestly. Clearwater also, I thought, was very accurate. Now, when I say accurate, I mean, aside from my quasi-skilled casting, assuming your aim is good, you want that fly to go where it's aimed. And this is doing that. I would say much better at the mid to further range. We're going at about 30 feet now, no issue. In fact, I just hit the end of my cast there and it could have just kept on sailing. So I would say the EDC is going to be great for dry flies. If you did kind of want to multi-purpose this guy, I would have no issue throwing an indicator rig, even small streamers. It's got some good beef, good power out at the 20 feet and further range. But for the price, this is a sub 300, or it's around 350, sorry, dollar rod. The reel is about, yeah, kind of 130-ish range. So you're not going to break the bank. And it's, like the name says, EDC. It's a good all-around rod. So that's a good one. Let's move on to the next. Okay, the next three rods are going to be, we'll call them mid to higher end price range and also performance. These three rods are specifically designed, I would say, primarily for dry fly fishing or very small nymphs and maybe slight slide indicator. And they all coincidentally have come out this year, 2025. These are three of probably my most anticipated fly rod releases in a while, and they all just happen to be kind of about the same time. So I got my hands on one of each. So this next one we're going to do is the Orvis Superfine. Now, just by looking at this rod, aesthetically I can tell that it's a lighter profile, skinnier profile. This one is also a 4-weight, and this is a 7'11". So now we're a whole foot plus an inch shorter than, say, a standard 9-foot rod. Given that, like I said a little bit ago, ideal for smaller streams. This is a rod that I'm probably not going to be throwing small streamers or maybe even bigger dry fly rigs or nymph rigs. But that said, when we're talking about function, and there is an aspect of this, at least any of these rods here, I would say an enjoyment factor that you probably are going to get with these above, say, your standard 9-foot 5-weight on a small stream. Will those rods work? Absolutely, they'll work. In fact, you could go down to your local Walmart and pick up an 8-weight Shakespeare ugly stick with a reel that doesn't ever come off, and you're still going to be able to catch these fish. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that, I'm not poo-pooing the cheapest of the cheap options, but I am saying that there is something about a dry fly specific rod, serves a good function. It's extremely comfortable in hand. It's lightweight. It's exceptional at fighting fish and letting you feel every little movement that fish puts in. The same would apply to the casting stroke. So at some point you want to ask yourself that question is, what level of enjoyment are you going to get in your dry fly fishing kind of mode? So that's why I like all of these rods actually, but specifically these next three are going to kind of fit that bill quite nicely. Now, so we got our 711, Superfine, it's graphite, not glass. And then I've paired that with a Battenkill disc reel from Orvis. And then with that line, I've got the Scientific Angler's trout taper Amplitude. And so this one, with the Scientific Anglers, you've got trout, which is a very fine elongated head. The Infinnity, which is kind of a mixture of both, and the heavier one, which is the MPX. which I would not want to fish with this rod necessarily, although it would do good roll casting. We're going to do dry flies. So we've got the same overall rig. I've got a very long leader, and my first few casts here, once I get the line out of the rod tip, is going to be just tight, close casting. And I can tell you right now, this one, for anything I'm 10 feet away, absolute finesse onto the water. And again, I've only got like a foot of line out, and the rest of it is about a 14-foot leader in this case. No issues at all. And here's kind of where the enjoyment comes in. This casting is effortless. It has no issue holding back the power when I want to lay that cast in short. And now we're just going to work up a little bit more distance here. Okay, now I will notice a big change from the previous rods that I've used. I've got to time my back cast a little bit more. This takes a little bit longer to load and get out there. Not a big deal. And so now I'm in about the 15, 20 foot range. Again, it's laying out super gently, which is what you want with the dry fly rod. What you don't want is the rod to overpower that casting stroke and have the fly and your line and or leader nail the water extra hard and spook the fish, which would happen here very easily. Okay, now we're gonna go for that jerk of a fish that's way up there. Haven't seen him rise in a hot minute. Okay, now I'm a little further out here. Holy crap, this thing carries the line well. Wow, that was good. Like, very good. Okay, that's money. I'm kind of surprised. Got a little bit of a breeze going on here. And I just popped that one 30 feet, no problem. Okay, I'm going a little further than that. I start to feel a little bit of limitation. All that means is I need to be a better caster. But dang, that's pretty nice. So I'm pushing around 40 feet now. Not as accurate as, say, 30 feet and closer, but it's pretty dang close. I would say very accurate. And again, don't criticize my cast. See, now I just saw a nice fish rise right up there. I popped, that was pretty accurate. It rose literally 1 foot in front of him. Eat it. Eat it. That's a CDC. That's an Antonio's blue-winged olive, which is a killer CDC pattern. See, there was a horrible cast. It went where I told it. Okay, now there. He's in the zone. Refused. So by no means am I endorsing my fly fishing skills here, because obviously the rod did what it was told. And we're going back to a tight cast because I saw another one rise in tight. So overall, dry fly rod, exceptional dry fly rod, had a hit. And apparently very sensitive to the point where I could feel that fish eat when I wasn't looking. I kind of saw it out of the corner of my eye. So I did hook one. For the few seconds that I was fighting him, it was phenomenal. Like, that rod was money. Which again, that's part of the thing when you're dealing with dry fly rods. So Superfine is super awesome. Great dry fly rod. I'm not going to throw streamers with it. Okay, next on the docket is a dry fly fisherman's dry fly rod. In fact, I'd say that about the Superfine, the one we just did. This is the Winston Pure 2. Okay, now we're starting to climb into a little higher price range. The Superfine, which I think retails somewhere $500-600. We'll put a graphic up because I don't have them all memorized, but I would call it a mid-price range. This is approaching $1,000. So, and again, not saying you have to spend $1,000 to have a good experience throwing dry flies. Look at the EDC in the Clearwater. But again, we're talking feel in hand. This is extremely lightweight. Winston, also known for their awesome reel seats and cork grips. But let's get down to the nitty gritty. After I foobarred that last fish by talking to you guys, I'm going to ignore you And I'm gonna focus on the fish here. They're trying to make me look bad. Okay, so this is a 4-weight in a 7-foot 9-inch. Oh, coming in at the shortest out of the ones we've tested. Again, great for smaller streams. This rod is built functionally to be mostly a dry fly rod. So again, we're talking lightweight, easy to load up front. This is not the rod that you're gonna wanna throw a size 2 chubby Chernobyl 60 feet into the wind. Leave this at home if you're gonna do that. But this is great for what we're dealing here, small streams, light leaders, long leaders. We got about a 14-foot leader on this one as well, little CDC dry fly Baetis imitation. And looking for heads, we're still seeing some heads pop up. And so we'll go in with the close thing. Well, actually first, this is the Lamson Purist, the new version of it. And so it's a clicker. And then the line here is a Rio, and it's also the Elite Trout and Technical Elite Trout. We'll put all the stuff that we're using to be down in descriptions below so you can know, because I didn't bring my crib notes. I think that's the line I have on this one. And then again, 14-foot leader. So we'll go close. As soon as I get the line out of the rod tip, we'll kind of start counting right there at about a foot out of the line. So I can't even, it doesn't even feel like I'm casting anything because it is so light. This rod is the lightest in hand. Superfine was up there, but this one I'd say surpasses that. And again, we're not doing much loading here. We're just more flicking. Now I'm moving out to about 10, 12 feet. No problem, of course, there. Now I'm starting to feel kind of the difference in the length because you use leverage. And that little sucker took it at about 12 inches. 12 feet. Got my handy dandy Broder net clip net attached. I don't know if this is sacrilege. We're catching a fish on a Winston with the Lamson reel and an Orvis net. It should be fine. Now fighting the fish, it's got enough backbone. This isn't a dink. Decent little brown trout. Like, that was fun. He pulled and I pulled back. All right, little brown trout, dry fly eater. Not the biggest specimen, but dang, that's a 13-inch fish. Extremely fun on these lightweight rods. That's one of the reasons I love the dry fly oriented rods, because it makes that fight, let's just call it personal. Anyway, great rod, great fish to catch with the dry fly. It doesn't get much better than that. All right, now where were we? I can't remember what I was talking about, but I think I just did a mid-range cast before I was interrupted. So we're gonna launch a bigger cast here. Again, this is exceptional at these shorter to mid-range casts. And yeah, so I've got a fish on radar at about 35 feet. Oh man, that was a laser. Okay, honestly, little surprised. With casting this rod before, I don't know how many times I've tried to get out that distance. I mean, I have, but now that I'm in comparison mode, that's money. I would kind of have thought it wouldn't do that well at that distance. You just have to give it some time. Oh yeah, that's solid 40 feet. Little bit of wind took it off course at the end, but holy moly. So yeah, the Pure 2, this is not a bargain rod, but it is amazing dry fly. Okay, and you saw it actually worked. I caught a fish with it, and the fish that were up there rising just now kind of decided, meh. And that's telling us to move on to the last rod in our comparison series. This is a good one though. Highly recommended. Okay. Okay guys, last rod in the lineup. for this day. I'm telling you, we might do more of these because this is a pretty interesting way to compare rods since they're all here at once. So we've got the new Sage R8 Classic. So if you're familiar with the R8 lineup as a whole from Sage, you got the core R8, then you've got Spey, now you've got the Classic, and then pretty much it's their new technology, and this would be the dry fly specific rod in that series. So number one, so first off, I'm using here again a 4-weight. This is an 8.5 footer, so a little longer than the last couple of rods. I can feel that difference again, slightly heavier in hand, but there is a reason I like this rod and the way that it feels. I think it's going to help us throughout the spectrum. So most of the rods have done pretty okay with in close, mid distance. Some struggle at longer distance, but having fished this before, I can tell you that this one does exceptional in all for what we've got. So we've got it paired with the Sage Trout reel. This is a full frame, full cage reel. It pairs nicely if you're into that from a color kind of aesthetic standpoint. And we've got our Rio Technical Trout Elite line, which again is a dry fly oriented line, longer, more progressive taper on the head, built for dry fly presentation. So essentially you've got another dry fly optimized setup. Got about a 14-foot leader, and we're going to try first with our in close cast. Got about a foot off the top of the line, or the tip of the rod. It's good, heavier than the last two for sure at this close range. It's just the swing weight of the rod. It's, you know, just a little heavier there, but honestly not bad. It's still loading. I can feel the load, and but realistically we'll probably be more out to 12 and 15. And this is the zone where I've been surprised by a couple of the fish here. Now I can already tell we're starting to cook with gas. This rod's kind of like a drag racing car that just wants to go. So now we're hitting, about 15 feet. There's a 20. And it's really hitting its stride here. I can feel it load and unload. I'm not doing any fancy anything here. It's just getting that fly to land delicately. Still in about the 20-foot zone, which to me is kind of the sweet spot. A dry fly rod's going to have to do well there. We'll put a little extra juice on it. Now I can feel that start to load. Doing great. Still dealing with a little bit of a cross breeze, not a ton, enough to somewhat dampen the cast, but that's accurate. We're out about 30 feet now. I'm watching the fish a little bit more. Okay, that's about 35 feet. Stripped off another 9 feet. Okay, now this distance really good. So again, I wouldn't consider this a long cast. This is a decent dry fly distance, but it is money. We'll go back in shorter. I've seen a fish flash right down a little closer. Still really good, kind of 20 feet-ish at that point. Honestly, very good performance across the board. It has power, like I can feel that power across all distances, except for maybe a foot of line outside of my rod tip. But still, I'm not going to mark a rod down. Oh, I had a hit. I'm not going to mark a rod down for what isn't really a cast, a true cast. If you have followed the line of these trout dry fly rods from Sage, you had the LL back in the 90s. I have one of those, one of my favorite dry fly rods. And then the new LL, which came out a few years ago, it's essentially being replaced by this guy. Very similar. I would say this one's slightly peppier, but still great. Like, we're undercut bank at 30 feet, extreme accuracy. Anyway, so we're going to keep flogging the water, hoping to pull a trout. In fact, gonna get a better angle on this guy and see if I can fool him. They're still out at about 40 feet, 35, 40 feet. Little challenge because there's some branches. There is no issue throwing this dry fly line that distance. No, little. There we go. Oh, that's right on the money. Let's see if a fish likes it. Bro, that was about as good a drift as you're getting. Anyway. So, very good. Anyway, at the end of the day, I would say there is good reasoning, if nothing else, entertainment value, to check out a dry fly. I call these functional dry fly rods because they are built with at least a significant chunk of the design in mind to throw small little dry flies for rising trout. And I think that's like most people can get behind that if you are around, especially trout that have hatches, match the hatch stuff. Any of these I would fish like I have today. I'd fish with any of these, no problem. Do I have a favorite? Yeah, but am I going to say? Hard to say. Honestly, I'm not, like, I like the R8 Classic because it feels a little bit more versatile across all ranges. If I had to choose something, I was just going to go dry flies, small stream, I would have no problem with that Orvis Superfine and the Pure 2. Those are both extremely lightweight, very cool fish fighting tools. But I'd say the R8 Classic across the board at this price range, it's going to be out of some budgets, but it's a great all-arounder. If you're looking to go stick kind of on the lower end of the budget, you cannot beat that Clearwater for the performance and the price. The EDC, again, would be kind of equivalent to the R8 Classic in terms of handling a bunch of different things. Anyway, they're all good. We're going to leave links down below for all the products so you can kind of see and get your mind wrapped around that. If you have any questions or any other suggestions of rods you'd like us to review, drop them in the comments below. Anyway, check us out at flyfishfood.com. It's been an awesome day. I'm going to stick around here and catch a lot more fish on blue-winged olives. Peace out. Here's what you do when you're at the end of a Betis hatch. You throw on the faux merger, look it up, and with the Orvis Superfine dry fly dream of a rod. That's a good combo.